Are you certain that all the mysterious places on Earth have long been studied, cataloged, and entered into databases? Then explain this. A mountain near which, over the course of 3 days, people's hair grows as much as it normally would in 2 weeks. This is not a folk legend. It is recorded in the diaries of Soviet geologists. Or take another example, a vanished metropolis with a population of hundreds of thousands that still stands untouched to this day, with skeletons in the underground corridors, with frescoes on the walls. Today, we will follow a route through 8 sites around a single mountain in western Tibet. Rock surfaces with vertical grooves that geologists call atypical morphology, and stop there. 2 lakes side by side, one teeming with life, the other dead, and the channel connecting them fits no hydrological model. And at the end, a zone with no markings on official Chinese maps, where instruments stop working, and toward which, in 1939, a German expedition funded by SS structures and a Soviet detachment of 12 men set out simultaneously. 5 came home. The fate of the rest remains classified to this day. We begin. Western Tibet, elevation 4,500 meters above sea level. Oxygen content in the air is half that of the lowlands. In winter, the temperature drops to -40. In summer, it barely reaches +5. The ultraviolet here burns through skin, even through heavy clothing. This is one of the most severe and nearly uninhabited places on the planet. Scattered monasteries, nomadic villages, endless stony plateaus stretching to the horizon. And from this monotonous landscape, a mountain rises. Elevation 6,638 meters, 4 faces, a sharp summit. On its slopes, not a single glacier, though every neighboring peak in the area is locked in ice. Above base camp, not a single human footprint in all of recorded observational history. 4 religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Bon, independently of one another, without direct contact in the early periods of their development, arrived at the same conclusion. This mountain is the axis of the universe, and climbing it is forbidden. This is Mount Kailash. Around it, 8 specific sites, each of which is still waiting for its explanation. Let us begin with what strikes the eye immediately, and precisely for that reason is the most difficult to rationalize. Look at any peak in the Himalayas. Broken ridges, asymmetrical slopes, chaotic terrain. Nature did not use a ruler. Kailash is the exception. All 4 faces of the mountain deviate from a perfect plane by less than 1%. The northern face is oriented due north, the eastern face due east. The margin of error in orientation is less than 2 degrees. Not a single other peak in the Himalayas demonstrates anything comparable. Geologists explain this through structural anisotropy of the rock, a condition in which fractures in the stone are oriented in strictly defined directions and weathering follows them. This mechanism is real and well studied, but it has a limit of applicability. It can explain the symmetry of 1, at most 2 faces. 4 simultaneously symmetrical planes, oriented to the cardinal directions within 2 degrees. There is no such example in any geological textbook. In any. This is a fact, not an interpretation. Russian ophthalmologist and researcher Ernst Moldashev, who conducted several expeditions to Kailash in the 1990s and 2000s, documented yet another non-standard parameter. The angle of inclination of the mountain's faces almost exactly matches the angle of inclination of the Great Pyramid at Giza. He also noted that the rock on the outer surface of the faces is visually more uniform and denser than the rock in the cracks and fissures inside the mountain, as though the outer shell differs in composition. Academic geology did not directly refute this claim. It simply went silent. In 1999, a group of Slovak mountaineers received official permission from Chinese authorities to make the ascent. The permission was revoked under pressure from protests filed simultaneously by 4 religious organizations that had never before, on any other matter, coordinated any joint action with one another. 4 completely different traditions, 1 gesture, 1 result. The ascent did not take place. What exactly is concealed in the geology of these perfectly oriented faces is unknown. Field research with direct measurements does not exist in the public domain. Chinese authorities issue permits to work near the mountain selectively. Which expeditions are refused and why is not published. The mountain stands. It is silent. And apparently someone finds this quite satisfactory. But the shape of the mountain is only the surface, in the most literal sense, because at its foot, something begins to happen to people for which physiologists still have no ready explanation. Pilgrims performing the Kora, the ritual circumambulation of the mountain clockwise, from different eras and different cultures report the same thing. Over several days of the circuit, people experience a sharp acceleration in the growth of hair and nails. This is not a subjective impression, it is a physically measurable result. Those who recorded the length of their nails before and after the 3-day route described growth corresponding to 2 weeks of normal growth. Such accounts appear in Tibetan chronicles, in the records of British officers of the 19th century, in the diaries of Soviet geologists in the 1960s, and in the reports of expeditions in the 2000s. This is not a single source. This is a pattern repeating across centuries. Soviet astrophysicist Nikolai Kozyrev, in works classified in the USSR and only partially declassified in the 1990s, developed the concept of a chronal field, a special physical component connected to time. Kozyrev argued that time is not a universal constant, but a quantity capable of locally accelerating or decelerating, depending on the physical conditions of the environment, including geological ones. Official physics did not accept his ideas. However, several of his experiments with gyroscopes, conducted at different points on the planet, produced reproducible anomalous results, which no one has explained to this day. Biologists offer a more cautious alternative. A sharp change in altitude, intense ultraviolet radiation, physical exertion, and changes in diet accelerate metabolism and cell division. A working hypothesis. But it does not answer a specific question. Why is the anomaly recorded not uniformly along the entire route, but at strictly defined points around the mountain? As though specific loci exist, places where something particular is happening. Systematic mapping of these points has never been conducted. One cannot help but ask, why not? The answer may be written directly on the rock. You only need to know where to look. On the western and southwestern slopes of Kailash are rock structures with a distinctly concave surface. Not random indentations, systematic ones, distributed across several levels of elevation and possessing similar angular characteristics. Participants in various expeditions compared them to parabolic mirrors carved directly into the cliff face. Muldashev proposed a hypothesis. These structures may be focusing energy, solar, geomagnetic, or acoustic, to specific points in space. In his model, this is precisely what explains the anomaly of accelerated time at the mountain's foot. The chronal field intensifies in the zones of focusing. Official geology responded in the standard way: differential erosion. Soft rock weathers faster than hard rock, forming hollows. This is a real and well-studied process. The question is not whether it exists. The question is why precisely here it creates such a regular and systematic pattern, while nothing comparable appears on neighboring peaks. No one in academic literature has posed this question directly. Several independent teams from different countries, working in different decades, described the western slope identically. Atypical relief for this type of rock. What happens to the electromagnetic or acoustic field in the zones of these concave surfaces, no one has systematically measured. Because no one has received permission to make such measurements. Who exactly withholds them and why is not published? The mirrors stand. They look out over the valley. They have been silent for at least 1,000 years. If the mirrors on the western slope are a question without an answer, then the southern wall presents something far more concrete and far more inconvenient for those who prefer standard explanations. On the southern wall of Kailash, beginning at roughly 5,000 meters, vertical grooves are clearly visible. Long, parallel, of relatively uniform width, descending from the summit downward. From a distance, they look like the tracks of colossal instruments that passed across the rock from top to bottom. Several researchers commenting on satellite images used the same cautious phrasing, atypical morphology for this type of rock. None of them offered a developed explanation. Standard geological processes produce a different picture. Grooves from water erosion spread downward, follow the terrain, and vary in width. Glacial striations are oriented in the direction of ice movement, not strictly vertical. On Kailash, the grooves are vertical, of approximately equal width, parallel. Geologists from different countries have noted this feature since the 19th century. No field study with direct measurements and published results exists. Muldashev called these formations the stairway to heaven and included them in his hypothesis of Kailash as an artificial or modified structure. Academic science rejected this concept without detailed argument, which is itself curious. As a rule, dubious theories are refuted with figures in hand. Here, no figures were produced. Why has no one drilled, measured, published? The answer is always the same: no permission. Chinese authorities control access to the mountain tightly and without transparency. The grooves remain. The questions remain, and official science shows no urgency to answer them. At the foot of the southern wall, approximately 3 kilometers from the mountain, lies a complex of ruins known as the Valley of the Kings, or in local tradition, the Garuda Valley. Scattered across the terrain are the remnants of what may once have been a large settlement: platforms cut from stone, partially collapsed walls, and at least 4 structures that may be the ruins of towers. Based on satellite data, the complex covers an area of approximately 3 square kilometers. The site has no official name in any international database. It does not appear on tourist maps. No archaeological expedition has published field data on it. One of the few Western sources that mentioned it in the early 2000s was quickly removed without explanation. This is not a conspiracy. It is verifiable information. The page no longer exists. The cache does not work. The site that was there is gone. What remains are descriptions by travelers who visited the place in the 1990s and 2000s. They describe walls with unusual masonry, large blocks fitted to each other without mortar, partially subterranean galleries, and what seemed like shafts or wells sealed with stones. Nothing was opened, no samples were taken, no measurements were published. If the Valley of the Kings is a blank space on the map, the ruins of Tsaparang, 100 kilometers to the northwest of Kailash, are at least officially acknowledged. This was the capital of the Guge kingdom, a state that arose in western Tibet in the 10th century, and at its peak was home to between 100,000 and 200,000 people. Monasteries carved into cliff faces, temples with murals that art historians compare to the finest examples of Tibetan painting, an elaborate system of passages and underground galleries. In 1630, the Portuguese Jesuit Antonio de Andrade became the first European to describe Tsaparang. In his account, the city was wealthy, densely populated, alive. A few decades later, silence. When the first researchers reached the city in the 19th century, they found it untouched. Frescoes on the walls, sculptures in the temples, household objects in their places, and skeletons. Hundreds of skeletons in the underground galleries. Men, women, children. No signs of mass disease, no traces of fire. The official version: in 1635, the neighboring Ladakh attacked Guge. The ruling family was taken captive, the population dispersed. Who exactly remained to die in the underground corridors and why, the historical texts offer no answer. Tsaparang still stands today. Access is restricted on the grounds of preservation. The underground galleries have never been systematically studied. What lies on the still unopened levels, no one says. A ghost city 100 kilometers from the mountain no one may climb. A vanished civilization. Skeletons without explanation. 100,000 people, and not one left to tell what happened. A dead city is a story of the past. But at the very foot of Kailash, nature has set in motion an experiment that continues right now, and for which there is no explanation in any hydrology textbook. At the southern foot of Kailash lie two lakes, literally side by side, separated only by a narrow strip of land. The same elevation, the same amount of atmospheric precipitation, the same geology around them, and yet they are absolute opposites on every parameter. Manasarovar, freshwater, clear, blue, 4,550 meters above sea level. One of the highest freshwater lakes on Earth. Waterfowl, fish, pilgrims performing ritual bathing. In Hindu tradition, it is considered created by Brahma himself. In Tibetan texts, it is called the living lake, a place where water heals. Beside it, Rakshas Tal, saline, dark, almost no birds, no fish, almost no life. Local residents call it the Dead Lake, or the Lake of Demons. Pilgrims give it a wide berth. No hydrological explanation for why two adjacent lakes at the same elevation with identical water supply have fundamentally different saline compositions exists in the public domain. Between the lakes runs a natural channel called Ganga Chu. Historically, water from Manasarovar periodically flowed through it into Rakshas Tal. Tibetan texts regarded this moment as significant. When the living lake extends its channel to the dead one, it is a portent of great change. Several researchers documented anomalous bluish luminescence of the water of Manasarovar at night, with no visible biological source. Bioluminescent algae were mentioned as a hypothesis, but no systematic study of the phenomenon has been conducted. Living and dead, side by side across a narrow strip of land. Two lakes that should be identical, and that are as different as possible. Kailash watches them both from a height of 6,500 meters. What makes one living and the other dead? Science has never officially answered. Perhaps the answer is in the mountain. Perhaps it lies beneath it. The lakes are silent. But there is a place to the northwest of Kailash where questions come to an end. Not because answers have been found, but because instruments simply stop working. To the northwest of Kailash lies a zone that Tibetans call the Black Peak. On standard access Chinese maps, a white space. A rectangular area without terrain features, without labels, without coordinate grid. In an era when commercial satellite services provide detailed imagery of any point in the Himalayas, this patch of map has been blacked out. Researchers who attempted to enter this zone from various directions describe the same thing. Compasses begin giving chaotic readings. GPS devices either freeze or register coordinates that do not match the actual position. Mechanical watches begin losing measurable amounts of time after several hours in the zone and return to normal after leaving it. Descriptions of these effects appear in expedition diaries beginning in the first half of the 20th century. Long before GPS, long before the topic became popular, Soviet geophysicists, within the programs of the 1960s and 70s, recorded anomalous geomagnetic field readings in this area with a clear spatial structure, whose center was not the neighboring mountain, but a specific point in space. Some of the reports were declassified in the 1990s. Some remain classified. One participant in those expeditions, in an interview given in the 2000s, said something difficult to dislodge from memory. We were told that the matter had been resolved at a level above our understanding. What exactly was resolved and by whom he did not explain, or could not. And now, 1939. Europe stands on the threshold of war. Hitler prepares to invade Poland. At this moment, two detachments set out toward Kailash simultaneously, unaware of each other. A German expedition led by zoologist Ernst Schaefer, funding through SS structures. The official purpose, the study of nature and ethnography of Tibet. A Soviet detachment, 12 men. The purpose, classified. The German group returned in full, with crates of materials, a significant portion of which remain unreleased in German archives to this day. From the Soviet group, 5 returned. 7 are listed as missing in action in the course of their assignment. What were both superpowers searching for at the same mountain in the same year? In open sources, there is no answer. Kailash stands today exactly as it stood 3,000 years ago. 4 faces, a sharp summit. Not a single person on the slopes. Every year, thousands of pilgrims walk around it in a circle, and not one ascends. Not because it is technically impossible, but because this place has its own boundary. Invisible, unwritten. And yet it holds faster than any law and any army has held for 5,000 years. Which of the 8 sites caught your attention most? Write a number in the comments. It is interesting to compare. If this episode opened something new for you, leave a like. It is the best way to say that continuing is worthwhile. Subscribe. Ahead lie several more places on this planet that will never be taught in school.